Artificial intelligence will create more jobs than it eliminates. 1, 2, 3. Is Trump's tariff plan a good idea? Compound interest is overrated. 3, 2, 1.
Agree.
I disagree. The real estate market will crash in 2025. Whole life insurance, overrated? 1, 2, 3. Here with Garrett Gunderson, good friend, business partner, wrote the foreword to What the Rockefellers Do. Definitely can get a copy. But we're going to go into a next segment, which is going to be fun. Our team put together 3 buckets of topics.
Okay.
And what they want me to do is they want me to read the statement. And on the count of 3, we're going to both say agree or disagree.
Okay, cool.
The hope is that we don't agree on everything or disagree on everything.
We'll see what happens.
And we'll go back and forth. No mercy.
Okay.
If
cool.
I disagree with you,
we're going to have a healthy debate.
put me into the ground, okay?
All right, let's see.
All right. So the first topic is trending topics, and the statement is artificial intelligence will create more jobs than it eliminates. 1, 2, 3.
Agree.
I agree.
The printing press comes out, right? And this was a long time ago. And the thought was it's going to just eliminate so many jobs. And it did eliminate jobs, but it was revolutionized education because now people had access to information. And so just think about Elon coming in and saying, we're just going to get rid of a lot of government jobs that aren't that useful.
Yep.
And those people will be out of work.
Yeah.
We'll give them a severance, but then they could actually choose a better career that's more fulfilling and adds more value. Most people think about what's lost, not what's gained.
Yep.
It's kind of like human nature because scarcity is so easy to sell. And I think a lot of people hold on to the relic of old jobs because it's what they feel is safe and secure and creates stability, but it actually creates a prison for them where they don't really get to express the very best of who they are. Just imagine if we have robots that are doing housework. Okay, so we don't need people to come clean our home, but at the same time, the people that clean our home, well, they'll have an opportunity to do something different. And I don't think anyone's really passionate about cleaning a home.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you on this because I can't read and I mix myself up. Number one, I think for people like you and me and like people that are entrepreneurs, most exciting time because there's so much, the output that you can create with the input is, I think, exponential. I do look at this being different than the tractor, being different than even the internet. And so, I mean, I now have a car that drives itself. Mm-hmm. And then when you start looking at like almost everything is going to be eliminated, I look at that from an entrepreneur standpoint. I'm excited. I actually believe that it's interesting because I think that it is going to eliminate more jobs in the end.
There's going to be a revolution of art.
Okay.
Because I get that AI can create art.
Yeah.
But there's some imperfection that human beings can bring that people like.
Will appreciate.
I guess what it will really create is more intimacy for those people that won't have to be doing busy work and they'll have more time. And because of the efficiency, we can have more with less effort.
And again, I agree with the people that are already thinking that way. What do you think about the truck driver or the person that their skills are very elementary?
Excuse me.
And the machine or AI is just going to replace them. Obviously, their quality of life, I would answer that everyone's quality of life will be higher because of AI. As a result, I think we will live richer. And you actually talk a lot about this from a standpoint of just technology reduces inflation because we don't feel inflation as much because our quality of life is getting better and we're able to live maybe for a lot cheaper. Like a king 400 years ago, our quality of life is way better than the richest person in the world 400 years ago.
Short term, it'll be messy because people won't know where to go next. And so we're really going to have to invest in education and using AI as a tool to create a lot more leverage and ability to deliver that value. The late 1800s, I think it was like 1897, the head of the U.S. Department, for patents was like, we're not going to need a patent department anymore. Everything's going to be invented. They were wrong.
They were way wrong.
So
and you're just saying that AI is going to open up so many things that aren't even that we can't even think about right now.
Because we're trapped in, I'm a truck driver.
Yeah.
And this is what I do. And it's like, well, what could you do if you weren't driving truck? And I get it. Without assistance and support, maybe they can't have an imagination of what might be a next thing for them. But at the same time, like, I think that there's going to be things that we can't even imagine or dream of that are going to come about. So short term, there's going to be a lot of people that lose jobs and won't know where to go. Okay. Long term, they will be able to innovate and create new work.
Second question, America should have a national Bitcoin reserve. 3, 2, 1, disagree.
I don't know. Like, I don't like having governments involved in anything like that. Like, I feel like Bitcoin's a vote against the system. So now we're going to, I don't like Bitcoin ETFs, to be honest, Like, I I like that El Salvador, they just have like people in El Salvador exchanging with Bitcoin so that they're outside of the government system.
Yeah.
So I don't really want, I mean, I get when you own Bitcoin, you're like, great, now these governments are going to buy it, so it's going to raise in value. But ultimately, what's their intent?
Do you think if we take Bitcoin out of it, do you believe that the federal government will use some type of cryptocurrency to replace the dollar?
I don't know. I mean, I don't like the thought of that at all. I think it like a central the central currency, CD, the central digital currency. I hate that idea.
Yeah.
Because now we're China. Now it's like, cool, we're going to shut you down, Caleb, because you said something we don't like.
Yep.
Or you left your house when we told you not to.
Yep.
And your social score wasn't high enough.
Yep.
Yeah, that's China. Like, I don't want that at all. And I don't want them to leverage and say Bitcoin's the reason that validates that we should do this. No, I don't like that at all.
Yeah. There's a beauty of actually having hard cash. So
I hate when places won't take cash.
Yeah. All right. Third question. Tariff, as Trump would say, tariff is the most beautiful word in the world. Is Trump's tariff plan a good idea?
So I would say, okay, go ahead.
1, 2, 3.
The first part, I disagree. It's not the most beautiful word in the world, but part 2, is it a good idea? Yes.
Okay.
You're going to have a lot more Americans doing work, but we have to remove unnecessary regulation.
Yes.
Because we have the people that are talented enough to do the manufacturing, but because of all the regulation, the amount of inefficiency that comes from that regulation is the reason. Now I get it. Like, dude, if you go back to the industrial age, we needed some regulation. People were dying at work, right? Like we weren't treating human beings as human beings. Like my wife read some book and I was like, stop telling me about it. It just makes me depressed. Where like kids were, 5 years old sitting in a dark mine and they'd have to open a door when someone came by. And like the ones that were in the best position got a candle every now and again. So they had some light, not just in a dark room. So we needed some regulation there. But then the regulation became jobs for people that prevented production. I talked to my father-in-law when he was first working. He worked for this union in construction, and he was getting in trouble for doing too much work. Hey, settle down.
Threatening other people.
Settle down. We don't, like I've been through many of those places where you drive and nobody's doing any work, right? And then when we think about the earthquake that happened, remember when the San Francisco Giants were playing in the World Series and the earthquake happened? They ended up doing a lot of private contracts that got bonuses to get some work done faster, and it got done a whole lot faster. I'm more of like, let's go for the efficiency, not the inefficient confiscation of wealth because there's people with their hand out.
My thoughts on tariffs are, if regulation was out the window, I do believe tariffs make things more expensive, and people like Trump will say that they won't get passed on to the customer. The company will pay for it, but we all know that
they'll pass on to the customer.
They'll pass on to the customer. So I get that, but then I also love how it could be used, because we're getting ripped off by every other country. Every country is like, feels like they can just rip off America, and so he's using it. And you see this like in what happened with Canada and even Mexico. They're going to have less people come into our country illegally because of the threat of a tariff. So I think a tariff can be used in interesting ways, but ultimately, I do think just increasing tariffs will pass on.
Yeah, and let's take Trump's name out of it, because I think people that care about the environment can actually be pro-tariff if you take Trump's name away, because China is egregious with how they there is no like concern for the environment whatsoever. And so with us outsourcing to them and having no regulation whatsoever, they could just pollute their life away and then send stuff our way. That's problematic. They're going to have, like this is going to clean some of that up. There's going to be strategic byproducts of that. But I get that some people just are polarized of that's his, they don't like Trump. It's like, well, okay, you can like the policy without liking the person.
I love it. All right, now we're going to get into general finance. Okay. And we're going to start off with a banger. All right. Compound interest is overrated. 3, 2, 1.
Agree.
I disagree.
I think
it's
way overrated. I mean, I think it's not overrated for the banks that get a hold on to people's money and teach people to be one-dimensional and neglect cash flow and lose accountability because they're just waiting for this money to grow in an account forever. Compound interest has compounding cost. It has that lack of accountability. It neglects cash flow, all those kind of factors.
You're saying, and I agree with you, by the way, you're saying a lot of times compound interest, where it's overrated, is advisors will say, don't worry about your money, put it with me, wait 30, 40 years, don't have control.
Compound interest sucks in 10 years. It doesn't do anything.
And compound interest with a lack of control can be one of the life-sucking.
So I'm like, hey, what if your philosophy was, let's create enough cash flow from our assets to cover our basic expenses and have financial independence? That means every active dollar can build more assets. Instead of saving 10% of your money, chasing a 10% return and waiting for 30 years, you create within 10 years financial independence, and then 100% of your money builds more assets, and you live the lifestyle off of the cash flow. That's going to exponentially beat compound interest. Compound interest is a tool that is over promoted because institutions love it, because you keep putting the money with them.
Pitch.
And what are they doing? They're cash flowing that asset while they tell you to accumulate. They're doing the opposite of what they tell you to do.
Compound interest is the excuse or is the pitch for why you shouldn't ask questions. Just
set it and forget
interest.
it. Yeah. Invest early, often, and always.
The pushback on all of this is you're 100% right. But when I look at America in general, most people aren't doing anything for the future.
And you want to know why? Because we're relegating ourselves to the lowest common denominator.
That's fair.
We're saying, you know what? You don't know what's best for you. We do. And who is we?
Yeah.
Wall Street? The government?
Yeah.
Like, we either train people to raise their standard, or we continue to slow down the progress of humanity by picking the weakest and saying we're going to pander to the weakest at the expense of the strong.
But so I believe in everything that you just mentioned, compound interest exists. It just is not compounding in the Wall Street way. So for example, if you put money into a real estate property or cash flow, that cash flow is an example of compounding. It's now it might be going back in your pocket and you can redeploy it.
But I'm all velocity versus compounding.
Yeah, but I guess what's your definition of compounding? It's
reinvest your interest.
Reinvest your interest. Okay.
Yeah, I only think of compound interest. Nobody's ever sold me on compound interest on real estate. They've always sold me on compound interest on mutual funds.
Yeah, I think of
on IRAs.
And this is why this conversation is really good, and this is why our team tiled this up. Is I think every decision does compound, and so like even
compounding decisions is infinitely more valuable than compound interest.
Right.
The choices we make today, the skill sets that we grow.
I think this has been a good discussion, and yes.
What if you don't compound your skills
subscribe
because you're too busy trying to compound your interest?
That's fair, and I would say that your skill set should create cash flow, which is. But you're totally right. Everything compounds, and getting involved in like Wall Street or a Roth IRA or a 401k, if that's your. I'm not subscribing to like that's the highest form of where my money could be used. I do think it's very profound the fact that decisions over time and that most people sabotage themselves or never start.
Compounding is great. Compound interest is
that's fair.
A tool that, is a relative. It's like when people said, Einstein said compounding interest was the eighth wonder of the world. That is not what he said.
Yeah.
Compounding numbers at a conference in Austria, Security and National Life took that out of context and said compound interest instead of compounding numbers.
Yeah, I think you've won me over.
All right, cool.
I think, yes.
Cool.
All right, so number 2. A 6-month emergency fund is the gold standard. 1, 2, 3.
Disagree.
I disagree.
Yeah. First off, I don't call anything an emergency fund because then you have to have an emergency to tap into it. A peace of mind fund is helpful, but I'm a cash value guy with insurance. So I have a lot more than 6 months stored away.
Yep.
It's what's even sillier is when people say 3 to 6 months. That's a huge difference. 3 months and 6 months.
Yeah.
3 to 6 months. That's like saying on a flight, it's like if you have that much variance, you don't end up in the same place that you thought you were going to.
Yeah.
Like we need to be a lot more precise. Yeah. Which is it? Because if people are going to, 3 months is suffice. Is it? What if you have a health challenge? What if you have a major family issue? What if you have a career change? I mean, 3 months doesn't give you a lot of runway.
What would you say is an ideal?
2 years would be great. 2 years would be great. I get that, like, I'm not going to put that in a savings account.
Yeah.
I would say that could be allocated in some Bitcoin. That could be I'm not a gold and silver guy, maybe a little bit of gold and silver. It could be a lot of cash value. But to me, I don't want more than 1 month in a bank. I have clients that got debanked.
Right.
So what good was that?
So, but you're 2 years of
liquidity. Some type of liquidity.
And are we talking on gross or like expenses of the world?
On expenses. Okay. Yeah. And look, I wouldn't count lines of credit because they can go away.
Yes, yeah. The velocity bankers of the world that are like, hey, I got my emergency fund in my HELOC.
Yeah, let's go back to 2008. People had these HELOCs, home equity line of credit against their home, that just got chopped and killed.
Yeah.
They just said no more. Yeah. We're done with it because the banks were in trouble. And that's usually a second position. I know you can get some first position lines of credit. Can you get those fixed rates? Because I get people that hammer me online. Like
the short answer is no. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Why would you ever have a variable rate?
They're playing math games that I think if we were to have Todd Langford with us and look at the numbers, we're going to definitely do that.
Well, and right now I'd be especially cautious of it because we've had these Fed rate cuts.
Yep.
But the 10-year bond went up in the treasury. So that like I'm not going, let's go variable rate.
Yeah. 1 year for me is like the minimum, and the two years is, and I love the peace of mind concept because I show up better as a father, as a husband, as a business owner. I can say yes to things if I know that I'm not betting my next week's mortgage or months or even 6 months from now. And so I'm able, like the volatility buffer strategy in life, I have a 2 year plus buffer. It allows me to make moves over here, and I actually make better moves over here because I'm not worried about being so transactional. So love that. All right, next question. The real estate market will crash in 2025. 1, 2, 3.
Disagree. That's such a broad question because we've already watched major issues in commercial. Right. And they've had a big pinch there, and that's been really, and like, if you're in Portland, good luck. If you're in, there's just certain places that like they got out of control, let's defund the police. Good luck with that. I mean, real estate's a really broad conversation. And I do think that, it's different if we're talking about someone having a second home versus a single family home that could easily be rented.
You don't think there's a bubble though in 2025?
No, I think we've already been experiencing where there was a bubble. That's already coming down.
Yeah, I think as rates come down, whether you like him or not, people are more confident with Trump coming in.
And price versus like payment. Like payment drives the price of real estate, especially on the residential market. Oh, interest rates went down. I can buy a bigger home. Interest rates go up. I can't buy as big of a home. That's kind of like, we watched that, right? What happened when interest rates were 2.75? The price of real estate went up massively.
And crash is a really harsh word, Yeah. Like, I don't necessarily think I don't think real estate's going to boom in 2025. So
more people have a positive than negative outlook on the economy based upon you have Republicans on the, House and Senate, depending on California, tallying up their more votes or whatever, and
still counting.
Like, how long does it take? It takes until we get our candidate in. You have more people that are like feeling like that's going to be pro-business, pro-economic growth, that kind of stuff. Less money to the government, making the government smaller, that kind of stuff. But making the government smaller, we're 36 trillion in the wrong direction already.
Next question is: you can't build wealth without taking on debt. 1, 2.
Wait, say that.
So you can't build wealth without taking on debt. 1, 2, 3. Disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I rewatched this interview I did with Kiyosaki, and and he was like, "Look, I leverage debt. A lot of people shouldn't."
Yeah.
And I agree. Like I over leveraged debt, and 2008 showed me that I was over leveraged. And so the peace of mind that can happen by certain people not going into debt, they can bootstrap. There's a lot of options that are out there. You could crowdsource and get paid up front, not take debt. And now your customer is the person that finances it. So we're just in a world where there's alternatives.
I agree with everything that you said. And I believe like I'm not really, other than my mortgage, my business is a result of just bootstrapping. Yeah, we didn't go into debt to start that. And I'm grateful. And we started with 20 grand in the bank, and we have more than 20 grand in the bank now with the team. And so that's an example in itself. What is your framework around debt? Because I personally actually relate a lot with the Dave Ramseys of the world that are like, I personally would not buy a car or even a home if I didn't have at least access to capital that could pay for it in cash. Now, that might sound extreme.
My first home I bought when I was 19. I didn't have enough capital to pay that off. It turned out well. Could have been luck. I bought it for $96,000, sold it for $179,000. It was just timing.
But what is your framework? Because I understand that I'm maybe on the more conservative side. I would never buy a house with cash. I would still use a mortgage.
But you like to have the cash to be able to pay it off.
There is a part of me that doesn't.
I'm in my 40s, so it's like easy to have that cash. In my 20s, it wasn't easy for me to have that cash for that home.
So how do you make a decision? Like, what is your debt framework?
I'm okay like buying a home that's twice my annual salary and finance it, even if I didn't have the cash to pay it off.
You're looking at more of the payments, and just going back to even what we're saying of like, if interest rates go down, you look at a payment, it should be very doable.
Yeah. Maybe like 20% down, avoid PMI. If you're making $300,000, having a $600,000 home, if you're not making a lot of money, it becomes pretty tough to get a nice home unless you move rural.
If someone came to you and are like, I really want a nice car, what is your rule on cars?
Get over it. Build some cash flow.
Okay. So
it's a depreciating asset unless you're buying exotics, and I'm not really into that. Other people are.
All right. Next question. A 401k is a terrible retirement plan. I'm going to play devil's advocate with you on this.
Cool.
All right.
You
1, 2, 3.
I agree that it's a terrible plan.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, here's the thing. It usually gets people to I don't like that people get automatically enrolled when they get a job. I don't like that people say it's a tax advantage.
Yep. Because
how's it a tax advantage? You deferred your taxes. Oh, well, it gets to grow compounded. Yeah, but you're compounding your tax on the back end. So a lot of people, it might as well be 100% tax because they don't ever want to touch it until they're forced at 70.5 because they don't want to pay the tax that they deferred. I think we have to question, is retirement a good idea? Probably not, unless you're, in the industrial age and you don't find a better job and your body's breaking down. But if you find something that you enjoy, you get more wisdom. You'll probably be more wise in your 50s than you are in your 20s. So why retire even if you can? Because
you should be the most valuable at 50. Yeah, I love that.
Just enjoy life along the way, and with that wisdom, continue to be productive. Might change your calendar a little bit. You might change your structure. You might take a little bit longer on your trips. But
what do you hate most about a 401k? Is it the lack of access to capital? Is it deferring?
Probably the government controls it is my number one thing. It's a tax code that they can change. I don't like that. I don't like that there's a lot of fees between the admin of the plan and then what it's typically funded by with funds that have expense ratios and 12B1 fees. There's no cash flow along the way.
What about the match? Would you go as far as to say the match is?
Well, if you have a high interest rate credit card, who cares about the match?
But what if you don't? What if you are investing 20%? What if you could invest the first 3% or 6% in an employer, they match it, and
just
then you
depends on your opportunity cost. What are the other options? If there are no other options, that match might be good, but don't think of it as free money. There's some handcuffs that come with that. When does it vest? I don't know. I don't love the plans. I know a lot of people. It
actually goes back to the compound interest thing, because if you are subscribing to I'm going to put my money somewhere and wait 40 years, 401k could be a conversation, but that's so against what you even stand for.
Right.
So then why
it could be against your financial independence, and I'd rather see someone create financial independence first. And then I know they won't have as much time value to their money, but they could fund that after they're financially independent. Don't have it cost you the cash flow.
Yep. I, on a personal level, agree with you. Don't have a 401k. We don't have a 401k at BetterWealth. People might freak out, but it's for that same reason. I had the opportunity to sit down with Ted Benna, who's the person that discovered the 401k. And I actually asked him a similar question about what he loves most about a 401k. And he said that essentially takes control out of the person and forces them to save. And it forces them to lock up their money.
But it's not saving.
But his whole thing is it creates...
They like that.
Yeah. That's what he's saying.
Because they don't trust people.
Well, but his point is, and this is where I take a step back, is we're talking at an event and everyone here are high-level investors, entrepreneurs. They think different than the average person. There's people out there that need to be control is actually a bad thing. Control is they're just going to hurt themselves with the liquidity and control. So I think that's where I struggle with.
And we think this is going to save them. It's going to give them a false sense of security because they think that, great, let's say someone makes $75,000 a year and they put money in a 401k. How much are they realistically going to have 20 years from now?
But the alternative is, and you would agree with this, having a 401k is better than spending the difference.
I don't know.
That's okay.
I wrote an article in Forbes where I said, just blow your money. If you're bad at money, it would 401k isn't going to save you.
It would force you to create value when if you had a lot of money, maybe the worst thing you could do is retire. Because then you would just die early.
And I think how much is this 401k going to produce for them in the future?
Yeah, that's fair. This was a great discussion. Next question. Whole life insurance, overrated? 1, 2, 3.
I disagree. Most people don't like whole life insurance, so I wouldn't call it overrated. Maybe people that love life insurance like us, maybe we overrate it a little bit. It's a great asset allocation decision for your fixed income. So it's going to be better than money markets, bonds, and other things like that over long periods of time. It's going to be worse over short periods of time because there's a cost of capitalization and the cost of the insurance. But I like knowing there's a death benefit that's going to be around one day longer than me. It's going to come in tax-free, and that there's cash along the way that I can utilize. But in the short term, you're going to have some expenses that are associated with that.
I think whole life insurance is extremely underrated, even with the people that sell it, because a lot of times people are just selling one concept and they don't understand all the multidimensional aspects that insurance gives you. And even for myself, I wrote the and asset on the obsession around saving and using money. And I didn't care at all about death benefit and other benefits. And some of those other benefits you could make an argument for some people are way more valuable than even the control and liquidity. And so the more I've learned, the more I realize that I have underrated, like whole life for me personally has been underrated. And I think across the board. And so, no, I don't think
mutual insurance companies that have been around for 100+ years have been masterful at mitigating risk. And this is one of the few tools that are left to mitigate risk. So I like that.
Yep. Next question is infinite banking. The way that people talk about it, overrated. 1, 2, 3.
Agree.
I agree. Dang it. I was hoping we were going to disagree on this. Yeah. I'll take this one. The people that talk about infinite banking just overhype hell out of this strategy, and they're obsessing around using your money, and they're almost making it sound like it's like, listen, infinite banking really comes down to saving more money, and then you could choose to save it a life insurance policy, which there's benefits, but there's people that talk about infinite banking as this like magical thing, and I don't think most of the people that
it's
are
not infinite. It's my first issue. The second issue is if I'm making an asset allocation decision, maybe 40% of my portfolio is in a fixed portfolio. And now that fixed portfolio I'm using to invest in things I don't know enough about, which is my problem with it. They're speculating and calling it investing, and they're like, oh, and then I'll be able to put that money back in the policy. Not if you lose it.
Yeah. So you're saying infinite banking, like just the ability to use your money on all these investments could be overrated.
Well, where's your fixed income then? Where's your rudder? Where's your base? It's like you've now taken that and put it in a different part of the investing pyramid that is less likely to result in a return.
You're saying the ability to borrow against life insurance is overrated.
Well, and I just think that a lot of people tell them that they have to make it work.
Yeah.
No, that's the closer you get to, 30 years, the more your dividend is your actual dividend, because they're so efficient at that point. So if they're declaring a 6% dividend, you're going to experience close to 6%.
Yep.
In the early years, you're not, because there's the cost of insurance. And now I'm going to take that cash and maybe put it in real estate, which I've done before, that I don't know a lot about, that I don't love, but everybody tells me you got to own real estate, and it's not part of my investor DNA. And now I've taken money that is stable and secure and moved it to speculation.
Yep.
That's my problem. Now, I've used my cash value to launch Killing Sacred Cows. I use my cash value to acquire the cabin that I love, and that has been a great allocation of my money. Those are good choices, but I didn't always use. Along the way, I bought some real estate that didn't work out with my cash value. And I'm like, cool, I just took my stability and put it at risk.
Yep. The way that people sell infinite banking, they almost make it sound like this will save all your money problems. And it's only going to enhance your good decisions or bad decisions. That's how I've seen people use infinite banking and be worse off, because it gives them quote unquote false permission to just blow that money.
Yeah.
And where if I'm going to reference back to the 401k, Garrett, if their money was a little bit harder to access, they would have actually more money. But I mean, there's, I'm not saying the 401k is the solution. I'm just saying that
I just want to train people up. Yes. I don't want to say, well, we can't trust people. They're not,
right.
They're going to make intelligent decisions. That feels like communism.
Yeah.
I know better for you, Caleb, than you know. So we're going to make it onerous.
I'm with you. And I also have seen people that, I don't know.
Those same people will invade this and pay a 10% penalty, just so you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
When they get themselves into financial trouble, they'll pull the money out.
Any general finance questions that you want to ask me? Agree to disagree, or we'll go on to the last section.
How do you feel about mutual funds?
I think they're terrible. I think mutual fund, like if you're going to put your money in the market, use some type of index or ETF. Why would I overpay for a fund that on average will underperform?
Might not even have the same manager you started with.
Yeah. Mutual funds, I don't understand why people use it. I actually know exactly why they use them. It's the thing that they get paid on.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Fiduciary.
Yeah. That's do you agree with that sentiment?
I hate mutual funds.
You should get a t-shirt. Someone buy Garrett a t-shirt. I hate mutual funds.
I definitely do.
All right. Last section is on the economy. We got 2 questions here. The first question is, the US dollar will lose its status as the world's reserve currency in the next decade. 1, 2, 3. I disagree.
I'm like torn on that.
Dude, do you know how big of a deal if we lose our reserve currency?
Yeah, we've watched Brazil, we've watched China, we've watched, we have to stop. You can't just keep adding money to the balance sheet. It's like we're diluting the value.
I'm not saying that the U.S. government's doing a great job. I'm just saying that losing the reserve currency is like we're toast. like the world that we know it today and the wealth that we feel as America goes away. I don't think that happens in the next 10 years. Do I think it happens in the next 50? I do.
Yeah, I just don't know when. I'm not good at predicting these kind of things. We're trying to predict a myriad of factors that we have no control over.
Yeah, who knows? But no, I think we're still strong.
There's a chance.
There's 100%
There's a chance.
Yeah, and that's where
which seems insane.
That's where like value creation is the ultimate hedge to unknown, because who knows what we're going to be exchanging. But if you're creating value and you're making people's lives better with services and products, whatever we're exchanging at the time, it will flow to you.
Yeah.
So that's like the people that don't create value are the ones that are going to be most exposed to unknowns. Okay, last question. China's economy will eventually outpace America's. 1, 2, 3, disagree.
Disagree in this caveat. As long as people in China, like there's brilliant people in China doing amazing things in tech, but they're kind of like groomed and forced. We have billionaires there and stuff, but because of how sloppy their banking system is, I mean, because Hong Kong's basically China and Hong Kong's powerful, right? A lot happening there. But because there's not enough like freedom,
yep.
I just think that it's going to be hard.
We talked about regulations earlier in this podcast, and I believe cutting out regulations, which America, we're super regulated, way less regulated than China.
And we're going to battle China more than we are Mexico. Mexico's so close to us, and
the other thing is you look at the birth rates.
Yeah, the birth rate is a major problem for them long term.
I think China is really in a pickle. There's a couple bonus questions that we'll jump into. Okay. Department of Government Efficiency, we got Elon and Vivek. I'll just read the question.
Okay.
This is what happens. So do you think Doge will be successful? 1, 2, 3.
Agree with conditions. It probably won't be as successful as us optimistic people think because it's like, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic.
Even the fact that you have 2 people in charge of an efficiency department, that seems interesting, But I do like
I think Vivek brings an angle to this that I'm grateful for, and I think Elon's got its status and gets things done.
Dude, I don't understand those people saying that he's not a genius. He's a freaking genius, dude. I mean, like the silliness of people like saying, "Oh, he didn't do this and he knew that." I'm like, what are you talking about? The proof is out there.
I know,
like,
it's unbelievable.
What happens is some people discount vision for technician. And they think if you didn't technically sit down and do the work, but you created the container, they discount the container. But the container's what brought forth the best of these other people. And I think Elon's really brilliant at that, I think that it's definitely such a great step.
Buying a car outright is better than leasing. 1, 2, 3. I would agree with that.
Okay, so it depends. And here's why. I leased my first car.
Yeah.
Here's why. The purchase was a certain price or $800 a month. Yep. Because it was the previous year's model that they were having a hard time moving. They would lease it for $550. So I took the difference between the $550 and the $800 and I saved it. And at the residual at 39 months, I paid it off. And then I took the full $800 to pay back my cash. So I never had to finance a car after that. But I get it. Like Dave would say, oh, if you lease, you're getting fleeced. I'm like, I get what he's saying, but I also actually I did lease one other car. And part of it was because I was worried about the value of cars. Yeah. And I was like, this is an insurance policy leasing it because I can give it back when the lease is up. If the car market collapses like I was worried that it was going to do, and I was able to just give the car back. Yeah. So, I mean, it just depends. But I get, like, if we're just looking rudimentary, cash versus lease, pay cash.
I want to have someone, I met somebody who's like adamant that leasing a car was better financially for you. And I think it'd be really interesting for them to break it down.
Full write-off if you're a business owner,
it's a full write-off,
where you have limitations on the price of the car and on the write-off when you buy.
If you're investing the difference.
What's your opportunity cost?
Your opportunity cost. I think there is a value. And I did a video a long time ago on like Elon, just if you look at the value of Tesla and all, and like if you take his value and then do like the 30-year mortgage, and it was like billions and billions of dollars. And it's an extreme example,
opportunity cost,
but it goes down to opportunity
People
cost.
don't have economic eyes, and we're not trained to have them. So the interest we see is the interest we pay. The interest that's hard to see is the interest you forfeit. So when you pay cash, you forfeit the right to earn interest on that money. Yep. Now, if I could earn 5 or I pay 5, by the way, it doesn't matter whether I pay cash for a home financially, 15-year or 30-year, because the opportunity cost is identical. Yep. If I pay cash, I forfeit the interest I would have earned. Yep. If I go 15 years, it's a higher payment, then it's paid off. If I go 30 years, it's lower payment, and I have that difference. And because it's earning what I'm paying, it's all the same in 30 years, but people don't see it that way. They see like the first time when I was in math class and Professor Mornier was like, hey, here's the deal. Here's the interest on a 15-year. Here's an interest on a 30-year. And I was like, I rushed home. Tell me we're doing a 15-year, saving all that interest. My mom was like, yeah. Then I go to Professor Hamlin in college and I learned economics. And I was like, oh. And I went back and had a different conversation with my parents, right? I'm like, hey, this is this thing called opportunity cost. So here's the example, 2.75% on my mortgage. What's my cash value doing? More than 2.75.
More than that, and that's not even an investment.
And
like what your business is doing.
So it's like, it would cost me to pay that off.
Yeah, and a mortgage, when set up and used properly, is a great hedge on a dollar that's getting less valuable.
Inflation makes that payment better over time.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Garrett, I love you, man. It is so fun. It's so fun talking with you. And hopefully Did
we disagree?
I don't think we did as good of a job, but because we just have so much philosophy.
Yeah,
one of the things that we're going to be doing more, we're going to call it the BetterWealth Exchange, is like bring on people that literally disagree. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to find people that adamantly disagree with you in some areas and put you guys in a container. And I
used to have a radio show, and those debate shows were always the biggest attended, right?
I can't wait. So thank you.